Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and folks, subscribe, put on push notifications so you know when the hell the show is going live. We had a bit of a wonky schedule because somebody was on his honeymoon. Say hello to Bradley Alsop, but we're back regardless. We are back for good.
We're back for good. For good. I'm never leaving again.
Never leave the
after
studio.
After 2 weeks, 2-week jaunt.
Yeah.
In the.
You just pick your nose on camera?
Did I do it? It was more of like a, it was more of like a.
It was an itch?
It was like a facial adjustment.
Or you were just taking a bump?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like, it just.
You're just doing drugs on camera.
It was slightly cocaine oriented.
Yeah. Well, either way, I mean, I'm back to making fun of you and
No
back to ribbing you. How are you?
Great.
We missed you.
Oh, thank you. I missed you guys as well.
Does everyone like Bradley's haircut?
Yeah, you guys see, I'm a skinhead now.
Does everyone like Bradley's wedding ring? Flash that baby. Woo!
Now I have it forever now, which
Yeah.
I used to have because there was the I got married officially at a church ceremony 2 weeks before I had my pomp and circumstance wedding. So we sort of had this charade of not having them on. So now I get to have it forever though. Now I'm a wife guy
forever.
Till the casket drops.
That's what the ring symbolizes, apparently, my friend, all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a circle, never ending, never ceasing.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, glad to have you back. Now we can get back to our regularly scheduled programming of getting kind of close in our personal standings in this competition, and we will get into our locks in a second. Thank you, as always, to Matt Leck for filling in last week. We even talked a little bit about the NBA. I talked at him about the NFL.
Good.
But he did quite an admirable job, and we had a good time.
No, I think it was long overdue for an NBA dispatch anyway. So glad that Matt could provide that because even for my standards, I've been less keyed in on the NBA because I just feel like the playoffs and personal life stuff has taken strong precedence over.
Well, yeah,
checking in on the earliest iteration of the season.
The NBA season for me, I really kind of tune in much more halfway in. Outside of the Knicks, I'm following the Knicks all year. But let's get right into it because we have so much NFL stuff to get into. Mike McCarthy is not. Wait. Actually, before I get into that. This is my Stephen A. Smith. Oh my God. They are so pathetic. The Cowboys suck. Can you believe that the three teams that have had the longest NFC Championship droughts are the Lions, the Commanders, and the Cowboys? The Cowboys, who before this streak started, were in half of NFC Championship games in the lead up to this era of drought. Dominance.
And of all three.
Before the salary cap, the Cowboys were printing money. Everything's big down
Bill
in
Clinton
Texas.
Was president.
No income tax, baby. No income tax. But looks like Jerry isn't the mind that he thinks he is. And you know what else makes this so abundantly clear? The retention. I can't. I'm so happy.
It's astonishing.
I almost could cry.
Yeah.
The retention of Mike McCarthy.
After getting blown out by a Green Bay Packers team whose wide receiver core average age is 24.
Blown out, and they didn't even show up. And that's the thing about the Cowboys, which is so amazing. And it's Mike McCarthy's teams. It's a total. Well, Mike McCarthy's teams with Aaron Rodgers were terribly offensively schemed. That's well documented. In Dallas, they're not really much better. It's just they're more talented, and during the regular season, they can beat up on bad teams. But we'll get into the lack of creativity in a second. What's so abundantly fucking clear with Mike McCarthy and this Dallas Cowboys franchise is how poorly the arrogance of the organization meshes with his lack of preparation and abundant arrogance. Mike McCarthy is not a disciplined coach. He's not detailed. He's a bully. He wants the Cowboys to come in and be like, we have the star on our helmet. We're the Dallas fucking Cowboys. We're gonna kill you. We're not kill you. We're gonna beat up on you just with the force of our talent. And turns out, once you come up with a coach who actually knows how to game plan, and Matt LaFleur, by the way, so underrated in the NFL.
I mean, with this
Doesn't work out. Doesn't work. When the Cowboys can't be the bullies, this is the point. They fall apart, and that's on coaching. And this is 3 straight years under Mike McCarthy where they have had humiliating playoff losses.
Yeah, like of varying degrees and varying layers or nuances of embarrassment. Like the inability to get the ball from the ref to Dak to in the snap to with the time expiring, the absurd lateral play that ended their season last year.
Oh, and they blame the refs too because they never blame themselves.
Right,
it's the Cowboys.
That it couldn't possibly be that for in a crucial moment, Dak Prescott forgot that you do have to hand the ball to the referee before you snap it.
Yeah.
Or having, Ezekiel Elliott serve as the center blocking 10 other guys before time runs out in a lateral play. Or, when the easy buttons for the Cowboys team, i.e., the defense producing turnovers and the offense producing no turnovers, when those balances shifted, the entire game got away from them.
And you know what's also notable is like, first of all, Dan Quinn was supposed to be a head coaching candidate somewhere else. Good luck with that, buddy, and good luck with whoever hires him because he really made very few adjustments. Like the Packers started and it looks like, oh boy, they're not able to get anything going on the ground. Aaron Jones is getting stuff. The Cowboys are ready for them to kind of play through the run. Then there was a penalty. They got a first down, and Love starts dicing through this defense. Just bomb after accurate pass after off-platform throw all around the entire field. And like, did Christian Watson even catch a ball? I mean, it was.
I think Jaden Reed was essentially
Jaden Reed had 0
a
catches.
non-factor.
I bet the over on his receiving yards. I thought he would have a field day in the middle of the
assessment,
field.
But
I mean, it was Romeo Doubs who had over 100 yards, and Aaron Jones is continuing.
Musgrave.
Musgrave looks great.
Too,
yeah. I mean, Aaron
Jones. Jones had 3 touchdowns, right? Is that 3 touchdowns that Jones had? Rushing touchdowns?
Jordan Love went 1, 2, 3 in his face. I mean, it was cool to watch because once Jordan Love made some great passes and they realized they had to respect him as a thrower of the football, did they game plan and watch the last 6 games of the year? Then they started to have to back off on the run, and Aaron Jones just kept opening up, plowing through holes. The Green Bay offensive line is super underrated. And they just kept opening up holes for him. And the Cowboys defense has been overrated all year. They are very reliant on their stars. And like they're not super creative.
Yeah.
It's the Seattle scheme that Dan Quinn runs. And turns out you can't just do what you always did as an arrogant organization in the regular season and expect to win when teams are really preparing and giving it their all to beat you.
And I think what you saw to your point is that I brought up that the variance in terms of turnovers on both ends for them, and the fact of on the defense producing turnovers or the offense restricting them on their end, and both of those came closer to the mean. This is something that Shannon Sharp mentioned, that basically when with Trayvon Diggs out. Yeah. And Deron Bland not basically having a pick 6 or an interception every game, you also kind of started to realize that some of these guys could be picked on in coverage if they weren't jumping routes to get interceptions.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, the crucial thing that we had been talking about for the last few weeks of the season was that the run defense, and it's obviously not only contingent upon one player, but it made very clear with how teams had started to kind of gash the Cowboys on the ground, and we saw this with Aaron Jones' 3 touchdowns, is how significant the loss of Jonathan Hankins and all of the potential stopgaps in his stead, i.e. Mozzie Smith, their first-round pick in the latter half of the first round, could not fill those gaps.
No.
So
that was super apparent.
And with that downgrade on the ground, it wasn't enough to just have Micah Parsons be Micah Parsons when it kind of one weak link or a few weak links in the chain, and the lack of that same production turnovers, and also Dak turning over the ball, totally shifted the calculus for how the Cowboys have been winning games.
Yeah, and Dak the first interception that Dak threw was just a great play by Jair Alexander, actually. but the other one was not good. The other turnover.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a beatdown, and the score doesn't even reflect, honestly, because how bad it was. Because at a point they literally put their backup quarterback in the fourth quarter, and then the Cowboys scored another touchdown. And then they put Jordan Love back in the game, and it was garbage time, basically. Essentially, it was a
right. No, the 30
shellacking.
points, the 30+ points, I think betrays actually how distant the gap was between them.
Yeah. But this is what's confounding to me. Before that game, Jerry Jones was asked about Mike McCarthy's job security, and he basically was like, "We'll see game by game." But you saw the game, and then they're retaining.
We saw the game.
We saw the game.
And Jerry looked pissed in the owner's box.
And why would he
upset.
even say that before the game? I mean, he is such a clown, dude. Who says that before a playoff game? You're
really instilling a lot of confidence in your coach.
And that's the nature of leadership, right? I mean, the coach is supposed to be leading the guys in a uniform way, and the owner is saying, well, he might not be here next year. What are the guys in the locker room supposed to think? Putting that aside, I mean, this is just typical Jerry Jones clownishness. If you were seriously going game to game, and if that wasn't just some lie that you were saying for whatever reason, for attention, or in some convoluted way you thought you were inspiring the locker room, if it truly was that, then you would have fired Mike McCarthy, because that was an embarrassment.
Maybe 2 seasons ago.
I mean, I would have never hired this clown. You know how I feel about him. Everything I've ever said about Brandon Staley or who did I despise? Matt Nagy.
Yeah, Matt Nagy or
I mean,
Eberflus for a time, but I actually think he's kind of.
I'm turning it around a little bit. I'm trying to figure out.
Tepper. I mean, he's an owner, but still.
Yeah.
Sort of who has been the object of our ire.
On my shit list. Yeah. Mike McCarthy was my great white whale.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he is continuously employed by the franchise I hate the most. And yes, much more than the Eagles, because I respect the Eagles, and the way they construct their team, unlike the Cowboys. It's so good. It's so good. And this is what we've always been saying. Jerry's not that committed to winning. He's not. And I don't like when the press regurgitates that. Because if he actually were, Bill Belichick is on the market. Bill Belichick.
Or even another example, even if it's not Belichick being the obvious choice in terms of
Vrabel.
I was just going to say high pedigree. Mike Vrabel is on the market.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted a guy who did have that sort of so-called toughness, brashness, tenacity, Mike Vrabel is an example of a guy who actually coaches his teams up when the personnel is actually not up to snuff relative to other teams. There's a reason why even when the Titans have struggled, they've always played spoilers to other division rivals because of him.
Because of him, and is there a team more in need of discipline?
Totally.
And Belichick, I think, on the offensive side of the ball and as a GM is really past his prime, but if you got a good offensive coordinator and he could be the head coach of the defensive mind, that team would be but Jerry doesn't want to give up control. Vrabel would also, I think, be able to demand from other teams control he wouldn't be able to get in Dallas because of his high pedigree and how the NFL world thinks so highly of him.
Right.
But Jerry doesn't want to give up control. He would rather have control than actually win a Super Bowl. And you know what he'd also rather do? Not pay out the remainder of Mike McCarthy's contract.
Too, right.
Because despite how freaking valuable the Cowboys are and how Jerry Jones has a super yacht that I looked up before the show that is hundreds of millions of dollars, the dude's so freaking greedy that he's not going to pony up the money needed to pay those two coaches, and we don't really know how much they'll demand because that's all
smoke and mirrors to a degree.
Smoke and mirrors. Yeah. But he would still have to buy out Mike McCarthy. He wouldn't have any offsetting because Mike McCarthy's probably not going to get hired as a head coach anywhere. I'm sure he'll just retire. So he would have to pay out the remainder of that contract in full. And he's not going to do that because he'd rather have some sort of a fourth boat or a fourth yacht or whatever. That's more important to him, Cowboys fans. And just be clear, let's be real about it. So I just find it hilarious. And I can't wait until, I can't wait for the inevitable flop for the Cowboys season next year.
Yeah, and our esteemed mod in the YouTube chat, Lanzetta, who I believe is a Cowboys fan, and as well as Joseph Wyatt.
Sorry, I don't mean to. I love our
no.
But
Of course, I just mean they also basically are thinking independently what we were been saying and what we were saying before the show. Joseph said Jerry is actually more interested in having control and a puppet than he is winning a Super Bowl. And Lanzetta said Emma's right. Jerry is only content with winning as long as he runs the show, and it's true. It's like the Cowboys for Jerry Jones at this point in his life, he's like 80 years old, is not so much either a business investment or a sports franchise with from Jerry Jones's perspective, the goal of winning a title or being the most successful on-field product. What it is basically his personal fiefdom.
Mm-hmm. If we win the Super Bowl, it will be because of me.
Right.
Sorry,
go ahead, please. Go.
But you know why he didn't put Jimmy Johnson in the frickin' Ring of Honor or whatever they call it down in Dallas for that long? Because of that ego.
Right.
Because then he'd have to admit that Jimmy was more responsible for those Super Bowl runs than Jerry.
Right. That like the guy who was actually coaching the players on the field was more integral to that success than the owner himself.
Yeah.
And I think
and
that
GM or whatever.
And general and front office person, but also like. So with that being said about the fiefdom angle, which seems really apparent to me, especially with this being, in my view, the third year in a row where there's been some sort of rumbling or concern about whether Mike McCarthy's seat is hot, and Jerry's basically.
I want to correct myself. Sorry, Jerry was not the GM until during that time. It came later, but
just the owner though.
Yes.
Still owner.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the being
I know
that
he bought the team in '89.
Yeah, so I mean,
I
35 years now.
There was. Yeah, so there was some. I just want to be.
I guess I don't know when he was starting like a really personnel.
So I guess it was 89 to 93 when Jimmy Johnson was the head coach, and that coincided right when Jones bought the team. So
got it. Okay,
whatever. It's just I was trying to get the timeline right.
What makes it so clear to me is that each from the 2020 from the botch snapback moment to now.
Yeah.
Each playoff run where it's ended, including this year, I've thought, I think we've all thought McCarthy's seat is probably hot, and then Jerry comes out and basically says he has full confidence in him. The only way we can actually interpret that, I think, logically, seeing how desperate or how large this drought has been for Cowboys playoff success, and seeing the clear deficiencies that Mike McCarthy had in terms of clock management and strategy, but also now in terms of now being the leader of the offensive output strategically on the sidelines with, Brian Schottenheimer's help. You would think that would be, as opposed to any sort of other personnel issue in terms of laying the blame on Dak's shoulders or anybody else, you would think if there was going to be a fall guy, it'd be Mike McCarthy. But for 3 years, that hasn't been the case. So all I can really deduce is that Jerry likes having his, basically his proxy, his owner's box proxy on the sideline.
Yeah.
He likes having his puppet, his sort of stand-in that will just be there for him to sort of take the flack and the shit that that the media will provide for the Cowboys for how they've been playing in the playoffs. That can sort of shield Jerry Jones a little bit because he can always sort of have the whipping post be Mike McCarthy. And to me, I think the control and the ability to offset the culpability is more important than any sort of long-term success for the Cowboys.
I mean, remember we saw that video of the hologram that he created, the artificial intelligence Jerry inside of the Cowboys stadium, so people can interact with him after he's gone. He's a lunatic.
Yeah, this is like
lunatic.
It's like the whole Walt Disney cryogenically freezing himself type megalomania. Honestly.
So let's button this up really quickly. I was born in 1994. What year were you born in Bradley?
1996. You
have never been alive when the Cowboys have been in the NFC Championship.
No.
The last time that they've been in an NFC Championship was 1995.
Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith were young men.
I'm trying to see if it was specifically you've never been alive since then. I mean, yeah, it was January 15th, 1995.
No, I was a glimmer in my parents' eyes.
Yes, you were. Or close to it. All right, well, that is the reality, and it's quite fun for me to crap on the Cowboys. The Eagles, it's fun for me because I hate Nick Sirianni so deeply in my heart, and I'll see that gif of him going taunting the cameras. Come on.
No, I mean, it's.
I mean, it seems like they may retain him and just gut the coaching staff, which is hilarious.
But it's hard. It's difficult to ascertain. Like, it's almost chicken or the egg, right? And what I mean by that is, I put a lot of the blame on, obviously, the assumption, and I don't know if it's completely arrogance, but the assumption that with the loss or departures of Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, that putting in Brian Johnson and Sean Desai would just like basically serve as a completely seamless transition from the success of the Eagles' offense and defense from last year to this year, because clearly that did not pan out whatsoever. And it clearly also makes it seem like, honestly, the 10-1 version of this team was a paper tiger.
Oh, it was.
It was like a luck-induced kind of lopsided win-loss record that did not reflect the actual quality of this team in the last 6 weeks of the season.
Pull up what I just sent you, just because I want people to enjoy this. Nick Sirianni is, I don't know what's going to happen. And the reports are that they're looking into basically rehauling the entire coaching staff with him still at the helm, which I hope they do. Because I don't know what this, glorified barstool employee is doing coaching an NFL team. Well, speaking of Barstool Sports, they were the ones that reposted this. I mean, he really embodied the dirtbag Philly-ness here, and I think proudly so, I would imagine, when he did this, when he was taunting. No, press the video, yeah.
Home field advantage is the top seed in the NFC, and they're really uptight.
God, that face, that's just like every douchebag that you've ever interacted with in college that just became successful for some reason. The reason is Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, who we mocked. That defense, there's no excuse.
Well, I
don't know how much you were able to see of the game because I know you were traveling.
Right. I was 7 hours ahead, but yeah. But I saw bits and pieces, but I think
let me tell you, Brad, watching the Eagles live, it was a joke. They were so low energy, so dejected, hanging their heads. The only person that showed up to play was Devontae Smith. That was
right,
it.
And he had an amazing game, and that was just it was just wasted. I mean,
Jalen Hurts looked like shit. He looked like he didn't motivate his teammates at all on the sidelines.
Yeah, there was
some
Goddard. Saw Dallas Goddard with expressing some frustration, I think, on the sidelines.
The defense,
Jalen was kind of sitting there silently.
Was somehow worse than the team that put up 9 points. Or than the side of the ball that put up 9 points. They were missing tackles all over the field, leaving guys wide open, putting in poor effort. They barely could get home on Baker Mayfield. They were letting him rush as if he were Jalen Hurts. It's crazy. There's something going on. This collapse is not normal. 1-6, 1-5 to end the season, 1-6 when you include that playoff loss for a team that went to the Super Bowl last year, and I still think has a top easily 5 roster talent-wise. That is not excusable. I'm sorry for the coach. I genuinely don't know how you can bring Sirianni back. I wouldn't. I mean, this is the franchise that fired Doug Peterson after he won the Super Bowl for them. I would have much more faith in a guy like Peterson running my organization than Nick Sirianni, who it wasn't just that they got outcoached from an X's and O's perspective. It was that the team didn't show up. That's really, really scary because a coach has to be a motivator, not a frat boy on the sidelines who, remember when he signaled for the first down and Jalen Hurts made him put his hand down? Did you remember that?
No, I don't think I remember
Jalen Hurts was embarrassed by how his coach was acting.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy Sirianni is. He's a frat boy.
And the guy that Hurts is too.
And why does the offense look like that? You're an offensive mind.
Well, so here's my big thing is that my big thing is that this game was completely indicative of, I think, so much of what we'd been talking about earlier in the season, in the sense that what we were sort of saying was the arrogance, or sort of kind of the assumptions that were not being borne out, in that Brian Johnson's offense was clearly not only was not as creative, but also was not clearly meant to, as Shane Steichen's offense did last year, and also did successfully with the Colts, which with significantly less talent, in my view, on the offensive line, with receiver position, with a backup quarterback. And what I mean by that is what Steichen did so well with the Eagles and with the Colts that Johnson, for some reason, could not deploy, is that when Steichen found something that worked, he made sure that was on the maybe top 10 plays on the play sheet of doing something very similar with very granular minor wrinkles to great effect. That's why the run game was so fantastic last year. That's why the one-on-one matchups worked, because they were actually putting their guys in positions to beat man or beat zone, which the passing game looked completely busted the last 6 games of the season. There was no ability for the pass game to really get going the way that it did last year. And for some reason, although the run game was much more potent, I mean, DeAndre Swift, I don't know if he
start the year,
but I don't even know if it ended this way, but at some point DeAndre Swift was 5th in rushing yards.
It
this
did not
season.
end that way.
And for some reason, that was completely minimized in favor of a passing game that was not working. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the absence.
Or I guess he ended 4th. I'm sorry,
but I mean, that just goes to show you that somehow, some way, DeAndre Swift was 4th or 5th, and it still feels as if the drop back game was so much more valued, which in a way that was, despite it not being nearly as successful as having the guy with one of the best offensive lines in front of him being 4th in rushing yards. Like, if you have a run game that's that potent, use that. And it just and that should not translate into 9 points against the Buccaneers. And the Bucs, who are I think overall, regardless of how good they are, Todd Bowles will always put up a funky competitive defense.
Yeah.
But in that vein as well, this happened with Todd Bowles' defense, but in Week 18, this happened with a Wink Martindale defense. These are two guys who are going to heat you up. They're going to blitz and going to blitz creatively. I don't understand how the Eagles were not prepared for that, or seemed unprepared for that. If you hear Wink Martindale and Todd Bowles, you're thinking these guys are going to blitz the crap out of us.
They blitz like every play.
And somehow there was either it's seemingly they were caught flat-footed or there was no actual response to it, and that to me is like inexplicable.
I mean, it's on the head coach. And also, Jalen Hurts is bad against the blitz.
So there has to be, and knowing that to be the case, there has to be something to mitigate that, and there was seemingly nothing to do that. And it also goes to show you that the Sean Desai decision, clearly for the Eagles, in the Eagles' perspective, was the wrong choice, because they went to frickin' Matt Patricia in mid-season without basically an acknowledgement that they had literally changed their defensive coordinator to a guy who has been kind of a disaster everywhere he's gone since before he became the head coach of the Lions, but then came back to his daddy in New England before coming to the Eagles. But on the defensive side, speaking of, I don't think they realized how significant losing TJ Edwards and Kayvon Wallace was actually going to be, even though obviously the linebacking core is maybe still the weaker point of the defense, or losing Javon Hargrave for that matter, because and Gannon himself, who given the record of the Cardinals, obviously left many things to be desired. The defense actually at least was creative and tried to utilize what they had, despite having a very talent deficient roster on defense. This team had more talent and yet still somehow looked unprepared and unable to tackle.
Yeah.
Nick Morrow and Shaq Leonard and Reed Blankenship were not the answer to the team's woes in the spine of their defense, and I think they were thinking that would be enough, and it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So seeing all of those elements just not addressed properly, and kind of seen as if we could just kind of coast on what we have here, despite some real elements and clear traces of dysfunction. I blame the coordinators, but I also but who put those coordinators in those roles?
Yeah, and you can say that, AJ Brown wasn't playing or whatever, but AJ Brown was playing for the rest of the year.
That's my thinking though. He was before, and yet he was still being underutilized and it was not playing.
And the scheme looked like shit. I mean, it just did not look the same. And I'm gonna say something that maybe Eagles fans won't like. Most quarterbacks, when you're blitzing, especially when you have an offensive line like the Eagles do, they actually appreciate the blitz because it leaves a receiver open. Jalen Hurts not being good against the blitz is a pretty big Jalen Hurts problem. And it's why people who study quarterback play basically have questions about him as a pocket passer when things are not schemed up for him. And I just got to be real, guys. Like, this is also an indictment on Jalen Hurts' game. As much as I think, I at least used to think he was a great leader. I don't know what the hell I saw in Tampa, but there are going to be questions, and next year's going to be really big for Jalen Hurts, and I think it's rightly so. He had one great year, but that team was like one of the most talented teams I've ever seen take the field in the NFL, and had a coordinator who made a ton of waves in Indianapolis. And I just think that. Go ahead.
But like, I just think, to your point, like the Steichen thing really jumps out to me, because I think where coaching comes into play, because I think, as we've talked about a lot, coaching can be nebulous. It's hard to really sometimes understand or really like tangibly calibrate what positive or negative effects of coaching are. But we have seen multiple times in many different instances, DeMeco Ryans with the Texans on both ends of the ball is a prime example of this. The Kevin Stefanski Browns at the end of the season with Joe Flacco is another example of this, where strategically, schematically, there are ways for teams to overcome the weaknesses of their personnel by playing to their strengths despite clear deficiencies. And this just didn't happen for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I don't think the Texans defense is necessarily by personnel better than the Eagles. And yet the Texans defense, I still think in some ways has looked livelier, has been more game in the last few.
They're playing for their coach,
right? And so I just think that, and then the same thing for Steichen on the offensive end of the ball. I don't think Gardner Minshew's better than Jalen Hurts. We saw that last year when he was backing him up.
This is what Todd says. Apparently, the Eagles gave Jalen more control over pre-snap checks this season, and it might have been more than he could handle. The play where Goddard and AJ ran into each other involved Jalen making 2 pre-snap changes to the play, and he confused his receivers. I heard that too. We're gonna see. I mean, they really rushed to give him that big contract, and I can see why, but I feel like, we got so much crap from Eagles. I got so much crap from Eagles fans for saying, like, I don't necessarily think he's a top 5 quarterback, and I think that's super clear that he's not. He might not even be a top 10 quarterback this year.
And I just think the 10-1 start masked a lot of holes that this team did have, despite winning some games. Besides winning obviously a lot of games to start the season, I think there was a reason why there were Philly fans who, despite the record, were sounding the alarm, because it was clear that they were winning these games, but there were underlying concerns.
Yeah.
And this stat from Sheil Kapadia of the Ringer, when the game was going on, but he said Bucs have scored on all 4 offensive possessions, 13 first downs and 219 yards of offense. That's with 5 drops, 2 that were potential touchdowns. So it also goes, so that to me is so emblematic of a lot of their struggles, is that they couldn't stop them. They were accruing a lot of yards after the catch, which to me that's a tackling problem. That's a spine problem. It's not chunk gains through the air. It's letting these guys get away, which is what the issue has always been with the linebacker core on this team. And then 5 drops, meaning there were mistakes to capitalize on that they weren't able to.
Oh, and Bradbury fell off a cliff this year.
And it's another gamble. To your point, speaking, another thing to say, we will get the same production from Darius Slay and James Bradbury, 2 cornerbacks on the wrong side of 30, as we did last year. That's not a guarantee.
Absolutely. Really quick, Lions win. That was like almost enough to get me emotional, seeing those fans crying in the stands. And as much as I love Matthew Stafford, and he played out of his mind. It's just incredible. It's like he just gets hit. He's not even a small guy. When you see Bryce Young get hit, and he's the smallest starting quarterback in the NFL, I think, it looks somehow worse when Matthew Stafford gets hit, because he doesn't protect himself at all.
No, it's a big guy going down.
He was bleeding from his throwing hand because of how much he was trying to follow through in the midst of getting sacked, and he hit a helmet. he is just such a stud and such a I mean the kind of leader on your team. I would take him over Jalen Hurts, for example, right? That's just the kind of player that you like, tough, big arm, can make all the throws, and he just makes them from every different angle, up top, on the side. I mean, it's my fiance was talking about this. He was like, when I was growing up, because he played quarterback a little bit and baseball. He was saying, that Matthew Stafford was Mahomes before Mahomes, in the sense that this was the kind of guy that I would watch and like to watch because of the arm angles that he would throw out, because it really is incredible. Bradley, if you hear me.
No, I was sorry. The reason I was trying to look this up, because I don't know if you saw this during the game.
Yeah.
There was this no-look screen pass that Stafford hit.
Yes.
That was like
I saw it.
It fooled Jack Campbell so bad that he somersaulted.
Oh, I saw it.
And that's, to me, that's also just what I love about Stafford, is the guy is 35 years old and he's still, no matter what, he will go for the trick shot.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you were saying and what your fiance was saying about Stafford in that regard, is that it was the incredible arm talent combined with the creativity.
Yeah, I didn't finish my thought about the base, but he was the first. He was saying kind of guy where you saw he would playing both baseball and football. He would watch and see how baseball techniques were getting incorporated into quarterback play, and it's the same with Mahomes. I mean, his dad was a
that's right.
pitcher,
Oh, totally.
He almost could have played professional baseball for sure. And it's just that's what's so cool about his game.
Two really creative, dynamic offenses going against each other.
Yeah,
which I also love to see.
And what was cool was that Jared Goff, he made some gutsy freaking throws, and you don't always see that with Jared Goff. And the ball doesn't look as pretty when it comes out of his hand as it does other guys, but he got it done, and he played gritty and he played tough, and he's so emotionally invested in this team. I know that I sometimes think the way that the Lions go for things on offense, it's so over the top. They're aggressive to a fault, to a degree. But is it to a fault? Because it's so about the identity of the team, and it's so about what they represent as a culture within the locker room, that it's kind of like, this is about the holistic picture of the team that you've created more than what any spreadsheet could tell you. And that's what I think is so cool about Dan Campbell. And also kudos to Aaron Glenn and the defensive side of the ball, because they actually were able to slow down the Rams in the red zone. Kyren Williams got hurt late in the game, but the way to stop McVay's offenses, and this is less talented of a team than he's had previously, but McVay's underrated for really playing through the run. And he's found a star in Kyren Williams. And when the Rams were unable to do that, they really couldn't do much. And Cooper Kupp had quite a quiet game. It was Puka Nacua or bust. And then when Tyler Higbee got hit in that horrible way and was out of the game, there just weren't enough options for Matthew Stafford. So kudos to the Lions. I mean, I'm excited to see them against the Bucs. That'll be a fun matchup because, the Lions have a shitty ass secondary, and Baker can throw the ball. It's going to be an interesting game
with some true one-on-one demons and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So
it could be a shootout.
But the other thing the few things I wanted to highlight there is that I was this A to Z Sports had this rundown about how Goff might actually be able to counteract the Bucs blitz happy tendencies, and I think for a long time Goff has kind of been considered that if he gets heated up or if the protection isn't sound, he falters. But I think it can be sort of a balance of the two thoughts in between, where per Pro Football Focus, Goff has blitzed on 255 of his dropbacks this season, third most in the NFL. He completed 64.6% of his passes for 1,885 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So obviously, the 6 picks is not great in that equation, of course.
Yeah.
But I also think Frank Ragnow, their star center, was not playing for a few games. And honestly, whenever Ragnow almost is like the weather vane for Goff's quality of play.
Yeah.
So when Ragnow plays, he's like one of the best centers in the league. I think the errors kind of are minimized. So I think against Goff being able to show that even while heated up or getting pressure, he can play like that has been a huge improvement and boon for his game, which I think was not necessarily nearly as apparent as a Ram. And so we'll see how that goes, obviously, into Tampa Bay. But I also wanted to highlight that McVay, for all of his schematic brilliance, which we've seen, obviously, as you said, with the run game with Kyren Williams, I think Kyren Williams, if I'm not mistaken, was the rushing leader in the regular season, or second, like
two.
As a rookie.
To think. Could have been an MVP.
McCaffrey.
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah. I see. Okay. But even as a rookie, I think that's extraordinary.
Oh yeah.
Right? And but Sheil Kapadia
third.
again.
Damn it to Derrick Henry.
To Henry. Okay.
Yeah, Henry
came
on really hot at the end of the year. Yeah.
But so Sheil Kapadia again from the Ringer said McVay is a great coach, but game management has been a consistent blind spot. End of the first half, 59 seconds left, 3 timeouts. You have Stafford and he sits on it. Then second half there were 2 wasted timeouts and there was left with 1 on the final drive. So
that's a good point.
It's interesting though because he is such an innovator, and I feel like it's a similar thing. I feel like somewhat with the Shanahan tree. With Shanahan and McVay, that both of them in some respects can be kind of conservative with clock management or conservative with timeouts. Whereas as you said, it's the polar opposite with Dan Campbell, who basically wants to take the bleeding edge chance almost every time, even when it actually might not be in their best interest to go for 2 or to fake punt or a fake field goal or whatever it might be.
Right.
But the one thing, just to your point about the vibes with the Lions. Mm-hmm. Kevin Clark from The Ringer spoke with Dan Campbell right before he took the Lions job. And this, I always think about this because I was like, there are few times where I feel like you really see a syncopation of person to culture of not just the team, but of like the city itself.
Right.
And for to read this, I'll read it really quickly. And to match it with, winning this playoff game for the first time in basically what might be 30 years at this point. Something again that of those 3 teams you mentioned in the NFC, who would have thought that of the Lions, Commanders, and Cowboys to break that drought, it would be the Lions and not the Cowboys or Washington.
Well, to get to the NFC Championship,
right? At least the one team that has the chance to is the Detroit Lions, and not the Cowboys and not Washington,
Which I mean, if you said that in the '90s, people wouldn't believe you. If you said that starting
now
the
it's
Dan
like,
Snyder era,
right,
that makes total sense.
But so in Kevin Clark's piece from a few years ago, he said about in regards to Campbell. He explains that Detroit reminds him of Texas, where he grew up, but just with different accents. A place built around family and hard work. He starts to get emotional and clears his throat. Everything about this place, Campbell says of Detroit, the bubble burst, housing, it hit everywhere, but it hit here. And then the auto industry, man, takes a hit, and the Lions have sucked for 30 years, and they're always the joke year in and year out. Oh, the Lions in this narrative, he says, in a mock voice of how people talk about the team. He continues, I just feel like this place fit me, man. It really did. Like I belonged. That I literally fit like a glove in Detroit. They love the Lions, they love football, and this place called out to me. It was like, you know what? You need to let these guys know what you're about, that you understand their own pain.
Yeah.
And so for as much as it was a lot of joke about how he's this guy who drinks all this espresso, he wants to rip their kneecaps off, he literally came in and reset not just the actual team success, but the conversation and the dialogue and the connotations around the team and around the city and around a big fixture of this town that has been a laughingstock for a very long time. So like beyond anything that he does on the field with these guys, Dan Campbell has really actually changed a lot for the people of Detroit.
Absolutely.
And I think he really deserves a lot of credit for that.
Good for Dan Campbell. I like Dan Campbell. I like his whole thing. I like his whole energy. Congrats to the Lions. I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them to get to the NFC Championship. I also got to say really quick before we get to our locks, CJ Stroud, stud. What even is there to say?
That's unbelievable. Against the Browns defense. Obviously, they were hurt.
They were absurd. Like they just were so insanely aggressive and left guys wide open because they were trying to rattle CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. Have you guys watched CJ Stroud?
He's very unrattleable.
He's unrattleable.
He doesn't rattle.
I can't even think of a player that's more unrattleable at the quarterback position. Mahomes, Allen, Burrow.
I think it's almost
Lamar. It's almost like, does he even can he get rattled because he could just run out? But like we're talking elite company of cold-bloodedness.
I think the Burrow comparison is helpful because Mahomes and Allen are more inclined to bail out because they can and are like very equipped to escape pressure. And not that Stroud isn't, but Stroud stands tall in the pocket and was willing to get nailed and making perfect
Mahomes
throws.
and Allen are like thick
Right.
guys, right? I mean, Allen in particular.
Oh, yeah.
is a
Big boy.
big man. Yeah, but so come on. Well, let's do our locks because we got to wrap soon,
Yeah, sure.
and then I'll wax more poetically about CJ Stroud. A little bit of a preview because I'm picking the Texans against the spread. ESVN.
Stone cold lock of the century. All week.
Yeah. Nice little precap of one of your picks.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I can't do it. This is way too big of a spread for me. Bradley's pulling it up right now. But I will let you know, first playoff game of the weekend for the divisional round, folks. I am taking CJ Stroud and the Texans to cover the 9.5 points. Let's just say this. I was dumb to take the Browns. I had a thought in the back of my head. I was like, okay, they played them before, the Browns won, but Stroud wasn't playing. But I just thought that this Browns defense would be well rested after having a week off, and they would be able to go into Houston and impose their will as the best defense in the league. Turns out, there have been some analytics done recently about the myth of defense wins championships. It's just not the case anymore. And that kind of bore out. And that's why I went 1-2 in wild card week.
But I see what you're saying, though, in the sense that if
Yeah.
a team was going to get rattled in the playoffs, it would be a very young Texans team by a good defense, right? But but as we just said, Stroud was not to be rattled.
He was not.
That's not his way.
I didn't even think he'd be rattled. I just thought that the Browns would be able to move the ball and that they might just not. Like, I thought that they would be a little smarter and run the ball more than having it be the Flacco show. And then he threw a few interceptions and it was over. But I went 1-2 in wild card week. I am not happy with my performance recently. I knew in the back of my mind I shouldn't have taken Cleveland. I got the Chiefs covering. The Tampa Philly over barely lost because Philly's freaking incompetent. Bradley went 2-1. He almost went 3-0, but the Rams Lions second half was just like completely scoreless. He won Houston +2.5 and Tampa +3 quite easily. And my one wing was Kansas City -4.5, which was definitely the one I was most confident in. Moving on to this week, now that we are we're tied in losses and only pushes separate us by 3. Scary times. I am going head to head with Bradley once again. I am taking the Baltimore-Houston over 43.5. It was a much lower scoring affair last time, and they played in week 1. That was a tough task. Houston going to Baltimore, and the score was not reflective, honestly, of how close the Texans played them. It was a little like, whoa. I think right now the Ravens are everyone's favorite. The fact that they beat up on the 49ers, they're the best team in the NFL on paper. I get it. But I am old enough to remember when the Ravens were the 1 seed in the 2019-2020 season.
The Titans game.
And the Titans came in.
Yeah.
And they upset the Ravens. And
no,
I don't think
Lamar has the playoff kind of stink about him still.
I guess I'm talking about the spread here, which is my second pick, +9.5. I'm taking the over and Houston to cover. But I think that the Ravens defense will not have the same success they did first time around. CJ Stroud is playing hot. They've been playing football for weeks, and I really, really count on that. I'm not saying they're going to win this game, because I do think Baltimore will still win this game, but I think 9.5 is way too much.
Over a touchdown. It's in playoff conditions. I feel like it's a bit of a hefty spread. Given
how well Houston has been playing, given how DeMeco Ryans' team is believing in him, I mean, he's probably going to win Coach of the Year. They're probably going to win offensive rookie and defensive rookie of the year over there in Houston, and Coach of the Year. It seems like that's going to be what happens there. Truly something remarkable happening down there. I'm not underestimating CJ Stroud again. More than a touchdown seems like the market is really, really going way too hard on behalf of Baltimore. And, the Texans, like the Browns, have seen the Ravens before. So I am taking Houston to cover the spread here. And then in terms of the over, which then I'll let you go on why you think that the under is the better play. I'm not necessarily super confident in this, but I just given how the Texans are playing on offense, I would be really, really surprised if they don't at least put up 20 points on this Baltimore defense. Just purely because I don't think that the Baltimore defense is going to be coming out swinging after taking so much time off. And Lamar, I don't know. It seems too low for me based on how Baltimore was performing at the end of the year and how the Houston offense has been performing.
No, it is a little low because presumably it would be like 22-21 or 24-19 something.
But sometimes
like
when it's low like that, the odds makers know something and I'm an idiot, right? So
in the sense of obviously there could be something we're like not seeing as to why it is this low as the benchmark. But I think the only thing I could potentially see, which is why I picked the under, is if the opposite happens and Mike McDonald comes out and these guys are like
that could totally happen too.
Are coming out like banshees, basically trying to heat up the young guy, taking a lot of pressure, a lot of simulated pressure to kind of freak CJ out potentially. I think there is a lot of nuance and finesse in this defense because so many players just play above their station under Mike McDonald. But with certain guys getting going, like Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Justin Madubuike, like Travis Jones, in a lot of different looks, these guys can just be aggressive and really kick people's asses. So I think if that actually comes to pass, I think it'll be a little bit more low scoring than we might anticipate.
All right. Well, we shall see. We're going head to head on that. I already explained why I'm picking Houston plus 9.5. Bradley, you're taking the over. I like this. Tampa at Detroit. This could be a shootout. There were two overs that both looked nice to me. I just kind of went with the ones that sat right. But
this to me is a combo of
the 50.5 for the 49ers also looks good to me too.
Yeah, I think, and probably for the most part because I think the Niners could really run all over the Packers.
Yeah.
But the reason I picked this one for the over is that the Lions defense has been playing better and they haven't been getting a lot of good contribution. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is as advertised. I think he's an actual stud. He's a star, I think, in the making. Mm-hmm. But even Ife Melifonwu, I think his name has been playing really, really good football on the defensive side for them the last few weeks. But at the same time, as you said, if it's kind of a chance taking Bucs offense with a lot of just kind of drop back from Baker going up to his big targets, the guys who I think had burned their corners are on the Bucs.
Yeah.
Like I still have a lot of trust in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin being able to get into one-on-one matchups and make,
totally
the Lions secondary their lives hell in this game. And then on the other end
the
of
Bucs could upset them. I mean, just because of the matchup.
They've been playing really well recently, and I mean, obviously Baker is always a bit of a wild card, but I think the offensive line has been playing well. The run game has looked a little bit more steady. Godwin and Evans are who they always have been, and the Todd Bowles defense with the guys that they still have. Levante David still playing as he's playing. Antoine Winfield playing all pro level ball at safety. This is a well coached team.
Yeah.
And so on the other end of it, the Lions offense is the Lions offense. The guys who are going to be able to kind of screw with, put some joker cards in their lineup to kind of screw with how Todd Bowles plays his defense. It's going to be the Lions. So I can see both ends of the offense in this game making some waves.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on that. I guess my only trepidation would be that Todd Bowles is kind of a good run stopper, and they have Vita Vea there.
And that's the thing is, if the
Lions can stop that run game, and it's probably no David Montgomery is my guess. He got injured last game. Mm-hmm. Let's see where he is at. Maybe I'm wrong.
But that's what I think will just be interesting to also behold is how they scheme up for that. Because like you said, Vea might be literally the best run stuffer in the league.
Did I make that up that he was banged up? Or I really do not know. So I guess I may have made that up that David Montgomery was injured. gosh.
I'm not seeing any, but that's
But I hear what you're saying. I think that over is a very good play as well. The over that I have to go with my gut on this. It's a Mahomes. It's Mahomes versus Allen. These guys take this rivalry between the two of them. And what's funny is like, I think Mahomes and Burrow actually hate each other. They really don't seem to get along. Burrow and Mahomes take their rivalry personally. If you see that Netflix quarterback documentary, some of the stuff that was said about Burrowhead and the fact that,
the Cincinnati mayor making that resolution.
The fact that really there has not been an instance where Josh Allen has stood in Mahomes' way going to the Super Bowl. The only teams that have done that are the AFC Championship, where the Bengals beat the Chiefs. Yep. They also beat them in the playoff game before that, I believe, or after. But most the consequential losses
have been the Bengals.
And it's been in Arrowhead.
Yep.
In many times. So I think it's kind of personal in that way. It seems like Josh Allen and Mahomes are actually good friends.
Yes, I think they are actually close.
Which is nice to me because I like them both. I like everybody on for the most part. But which starting quarterback do I not like?
Derek Carr.
Of the young guns. I hate Derek Carr.
I don't think of the young guys you like most of them. I don't think there's.
Yeah. There's no one
even
really...
Bryce Young. It's not even really his fault.
Yeah, I know.
He seems like a nice guy.
I like all the young guys. Yeah. I mean, eventually they'll fall from grace. But that's just a bit of a tangent. I'm going with the over. Kansas City Buffalo. I think they're going to try to put on a show. I know that the Chiefs' offense, it's just not what it should be. The receivers aren't good. But I think Mahomes, where there's a will, there's a way, and these guys know how to try to outcompete one another, and they're going to be firing.
And that's part of my reasoning
for
over
taking 45 and a
half.
half.
That's part of my reasoning for taking Chiefs plus 2.5 against the Bills is I still think there's a distinct chance that just the Bills just kind of convincingly win this game. I don't think it's completely out of the question, because this is probably the most vulnerable I think I've seen the Chiefs or thought about the Chiefs in the playoffs in a long time. But at the same time, I still need to basically be shown that Patrick Mahomes cannot will a team to win a playoff game, despite the personnel.
They're also battle tested, you know,
and that's and with battle tested. Despite there being some offensive shortcomings, what I still think is the best defense he's had in his 5 years in the playoffs. Yeah. And so, but that being said, a kind of antidote to a great defense is having just not only the athletic and arm talent and ingenuity and creativity of Josh Allen, but also the mindset that Josh Allen has, which is rain hellfire down your throat no matter what the context, no matter the situation. So if there's going to be fireworks, it's going to be in this game.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm thinking about, the over there. God, I'm reconsidering that Houston-Baltimore over. No, I'm not. I was between. I mean, damn. I'm really in my head at this point. All right, that's it, folks. We have I'm going with the over 43.5 in Baltimore, Houston plus 9.5 Houston, over 45.5 Kansas City at Buffalo. Bradley is going with the under in the Baltimore Houston game, the over in the Tampa Bay Detroit game, and plus 2.5 for the Chiefs in Orchard Park. Folks, it's very, very close between us right now. It's 26-30-1 and 23-30-4. God, it sucks that we have losing records. I feel like I'm good at this until I see that record. Wow.
This has been hard. It's a
very tough year. With all the quarterback injuries, too.
It was just so difficult to parse who was good in so many different ways.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's what we've got here, folks. Welcome Bradley back. Say hello to him. Show your love in the comments. We'll read some IMs really quickly because we got a few. Antonin Scalia's goes, Bradley, are you excited for Dalvin Cook to play this weekend?
Oh, yeah, right. He's on the Ravens now, right?
Yep. He's definitely like a depth piece.
Great
he
choice.
Looks washed.
No, just another pristine front office decision by the New York Jets.
They're killing it. 400 blowing me says, does Bradley have a Stanley Cup? No, that's not Bradley's even.
This is a liquid IV cup. I guess
one of our
sponsors brought this over, but yeah, no, it's not my cup.
And usually Matt sits there, and I actually. Okay, so here's this little secret. I can't believe I'm saying this on air. So I secretly sometimes do a deep wash of all the cups in the office.
I'm gonna have to bleep this out.
And I put it in the dishwasher that we have a countertop one, which sometimes Sam doesn't like when we do that. Don't clip this, I swear to fucking God. I do it for everybody, and I was looking at that mug to see if it was used so I could wash it, and it's just been sitting there
no,
unused
it's just
on Matt's desk.
There's nothing in it.
For like 6 months.
Yeah,
I should take it home. I mean, someone should take it home and use that mug.
These desks just basically get like the paper just grows out of them. So,
I know. Okay. God, honestly, I just admitted to a crime on the internet. Anton Scalia's Ghost, completely different team from 2019. Oh, this is in reference. Browns defense is the worst point per game average on the road this season. You're referring to the Ravens. I agree. I think the Ravens are going to win, but the point is just like they didn't play Lamar Jackson in the final week of the season. So
they haven't played they
haven't played a lot of their starters for 2 weeks, not just 1 week. And I think that does create some rust. Yay Musk B. Jonesin says, am I allowed to make bets with you guys since you're confident in the 49ers if the Packers win? I get some sort of soundbite in the chat next to ESVN. If the 49ers win, I'll give a Twitch sub for MR. I mean, if that's what the bet is, go ahead.
No problem.
J-Man J's, Josh Allen and the Bills are cooking. My raps are going in a different direction. Finally, I believe in Masai. Left is best. Yes.
Yeah, Siakam to the Pacers. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
3 first rounders and Bruce Brown to Toronto for Siakam.
I mean, they're rebuilding, and then they gotta. We'll see how IQ finishes the rest of the season. See if he can, if he can cement the starting point guard situation there. But I would imagine RJ will be there to stay for a while. He's under contract. Fiduciary duty, but this S2 test told me Stroud is stupid, so I don't know what to think. Good point. This will be Will from Indiana. Firstly, welcome back, Bradley. The combination of your return, the interviews with Marco and Robin on Majority Report earlier, and talking about the Cowboys and Eagles choking makes this for an absolutely wonderful day for you all and the audience listening. Also, Indiana basketball sucks. The men's team got blown out by second-ranked Purdue and Zach Edey, and the women's team got broken in half by Caitlin Clark this past weekend. She seems to be doing that a lot, right?
Yeah, that's just her thing.
Honestly, I know that, it's a little annoying that she as a white player gets so much more outsized media attention than other black women in basketball. I mean, Angel Reese is my understanding she's not had the best season this year compared to last, but she'll be the first overall pick. What is it? It's Indiana, right? That's the first overall pick in the WNBA.
They did. I think they did. I don't know if they have it again.
No, they have it. The Indiana Fever.
There you go.
They got it. So they will. In the Indiana Fever, you will be drafting Caitlin Clark.
Pacers basketball is just on the up and up.
Oh my gosh, totally. Honestly, same for my enthusiasm for the women's team has been sapped because there's an Israeli Zionist on the team, and she does not shy away from saying it. I have a ton to say on that front, but it's a familiar story. Nobody really calls her out, and Indiana has notably had recent anti-Palestine problems. Not really great for that school to be my alma mater. Anyway, great stuff as always, and much love to you all, to you both. Left is ESPN. Will every one of these institutions seems to have these problems?
Not native to.
You're not Liberty University. It's not uniquely horrible.
Go Hoosiers.
But yeah. Small D Democrat is a Seahawks fan and Coug fan. I'm devastated that Carroll is out, but Mike Leach is no longer with us to replace him. Long live the air raid. NJ Mailman, you guys should talk about the Palestinian men's national soccer team getting a big draw today at the Asian Cup. Well, I would have to look more into that. Kowalski from Nebraska. How the ESVN Super Bowl 27 took place on January 31st, 1993 between the Cowboys and Bills, where the Cowboys won 52-17. My mom was from East Texas. She was always a huge Texas sports fan. And my folks were known for throwing big parties and hosting a big Super Bowl party that year, like 30-plus people type parties. I was also told my dad's bet the Cowboys cleared the spread and was a decent payout, too. You might be curious about where I'm going with this, but 9 months after I was born... So I kind of owe the Cowboys for my existence. Life is random. That is so funny. Oh, Kowalski. So that's January 31st. So you're a late November birthday, Kowalski. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Your dad must have been celebrating that night. Rest in peace to your family, Kowalski. Love you lots. And the final, I am not your whole family, obviously. I'm sorry. I meant to say you've honored your father before. I think it's lovely. And the final, I am of the day. J-Man J. Wait, no, I already read that. Mine Pillow Guy. As a Packers fan, I want to say I really empathize with you guys as Giants and Jets fans. For about 9 weeks there, Green Bay didn't have an elite quarterback, and it really sucked to experience that drought. But the good news for Bradley is when the Jets get Jordan Love in 15 to 20 years, maybe he'll play more than a few snaps.
Oh, you're so nasty.
So, just such a nasty woman.
You're so nasty.
You're bleeding out of your eyes, bleeding out of your wherever.
Don't you dare wish that upon me.
I mean, that
it's
was
a fucking
what
pox.
everyone was saying. Everyone. I mean, look.
It's cool. It's cool. Like, it's cool when a franchise goes from one generational quarterback to another to presumably another. And I was negative 27 the last time the Jets had a generational quarterback. It's really no big deal.
I mean, I don't really think the Giants have ever had a generational quarterback.
At least they've won 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I don't think Eli Manning should be in the Hall of Fame. I've always said that. Like, Eli Manning had great moments, but should Joe Flacco be in the Hall of Fame? I don't think so either. I think it should be a more difficult process. And those teams were carried
I think
by
Eli
their
will get in,
defenses.
though, just by
Eli will
virtue
because
of
of his name and because of the 2 rings, but...
Right. I don't think Flacco will, though, honestly.
The fact that Eli Manning was the MVP in that first Super Bowl, 17-14, is a joke. It's a joke. It was a joke. I mean, that I really can't stand that. It should have been Strahan. It should have been one of those guys on defense.
Or OC or whoever.
The pass that Eli Manning threw up to David Tyree,
it was an unbelievable
9 out of 10 times is an interception.
Right,
so
right. For those 2, it was an act of God, though.
I love Eli, but let's be real. I mean, the Mannings play politics in the NFL like nobody's business, and he'll get in because of his name. And he led the league in interceptions most years when he would play. Eli also did this annoying thing where he would play crappy in the regular season because especially later on, he'd protect himself, and then he'd get super tough in the postseason, and that's why the Giants would go on all these runs. But that part of me wanted to be like, Eli, maybe just try to play with this grit during the regular season, so we're not squeaking into the playoffs or missing it altogether. So that was the Eli experience. Anyway, appreciate you all. I gotta let Bradley go to sleep. My God, he must be exhausted. We will see you all on Monday with a recap of this incredible weekend, the best weekend in the NFL, divisional weekend. 4 games, all meaningful, all exciting. Can't wait.
Can't wait.
See you Monday.
Bye-bye. Bye.